please call the roll.
Mayor Angel.
Here.
Commissioner Crawford.
Here.
Commissioner Householder.
Here.
Commissioner Jennings.
Here.
Commissioner Shirley.
Please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. First item on the agenda is the Citizens Forum. If there's anyone here from the public that wants to speak on any item not on today's agenda, come on up to the podium, give us your name and address. Seeing none, next item is public hearings and items scheduled for a certain time. We don't have any of those, so we're on to the consent agenda.
Item 6.1, approve the minutes of February 27, 2012. Item 6.2, approve the acquisition and installation of a fire station alerting system.
Does the commissioner want to remove any of the items from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'll bring it to the commission for action.
Mayor, I'd move that we approve the consent agenda as read.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 4-0. Don't have anything under development business, so we're on to administration.
Item 8.1, second reading ordinance number 12, 10,630, amending Chapter 33, Article 3 of the Salina Code pertaining to junk and junk dealers. Sub-item 8.1A, resolution number 126886, amending the comprehensive fee schedule by adding fees for scrap metal dealer application registration and scrap metal dealer registration annual renewal.
Ordinance 12-10630 was passed on first reading on February 27, 2012. Since that time, no comments have been received. Well, we need two separate actions then. Mr. Gage or Mr. Bankston?
Yeah, since there's two resolutions, that'd be good.
Is there any public comment on this ordinance today? Seeing none, I'll bring it to the commission for action.
Mayor, I make a motion that we approve ordinance number 12-10630 on second reading.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt ordinance 12-10630 on second reading. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Crawford.
Aye.
Commissioner Householder.
Aye.
Commissioner Jennings.
Aye.
Mayor Angel.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve resolution number 12-6886, amending the comprehensive fee schedule by adding the fees for scrap metal dealer application registration and scrap metal dealer registration annual renewal.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt resolution 12-6886. Is there any public comment on this? Seeing none, I'll bring it. Oh, we have a motion and a second. Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 4-0.
Item 8.2, authorization to sign the agreements with Union Pacific Railroad to perform at-grade public road crossing improvements at South Street and Walnut Street.
Mr. Stack.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Commissioners. This is part of our annual street maintenance program, portion of which we spend on railroad crossings around the city. South Street has been one that's on our list for quite a while. It's in very bad shape, and then the next one as well, just north of there, is on Walnut Street. UPRR they send us an agreement, and it took quite a while to get these agreements, but when we get them, we're able to get both of these at the same time. And it's basically a 65-35 split for non-mainline sections of track. On their main lines, they're 50-50, but these are the non-mainline sections, so it's a 35-65 split. They basically relay the section of track, put concrete panels underneath the tracks, put in the necessary cross ties and ballast, which is basically the rock underneath the tracks, And then city crews actually perform the maintenance of the pavement tie-in necessary to make it a smoother crossing. So some of the ones recently completed are on Neal and another one on State Street in the last year. We believe the estimates are fair and normal for the work. They've actually have been good about conservatively estimating them so that they have come in under budget on the last few. So it's helpful that we believe these are worst case scenarios for the share of costs. Our gas tax budget allows $100,000 for a couple crossings a year, and these are at about $84,000. So we'd recommend signing these agreements to perform the at-grade crossings improvements on South Street and Walnut Street. Any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Stack? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any public comment on this? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission for action.
Mayor, I make a motion that we approve the authorization to sign the agreement with the Union Pacific Railroad to perform the work at both locations on South Street and Walnut Street at the railroad crossings.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the commission authorize two agreements with regard to railroad crossings, project number 12-2908 and project number 12-2909. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 4-0. Any other business?
Commissioners, I have one item. With the recent forms and consideration of the request by the Kansas Equality Coalition to add into your Chapter 13 affirmative action equal opportunity ordinance the protected classes of sexual orientation and gender identity, we've had a lot of questions both through the forms and outside of that related to can the issue be put on the ballot by the public and what's the process. So as a result of that, I've asked the city's legal counsel, Greg Bingson, to put together an overview, and you have a copy of that handout there, and I think we'll just post that on our webpage for access and certainly respond to any public record request for that. But thought this would be a good opportunity for Greg maybe to just kind of verbally take you through it, and if you have any questions, see if we can answer those.
Thank you.
Did you want to take us through it?
I'll be happy to take whatever approach you wish.
Give us the overview, Greg.
All right. Kansas law does provide a means for submission of an ordinance for consideration by the Board of Commissioners by the filing of a petition. In the case of a city of the first class, as is Salina, that percentage is 25% of the electors who voted at the last preceding city election. In checking with Don Merriman, the county clerk, who also serves in the role as county election officer, they unofficially report that number to have been 5,186 in the last city general election, April 5th, 2011. So there is a means for petitioning on that basis. The statute that authorizes that specifically exempts certain types of ordinances, administrative ordinances, those relating potentially to the levy of special assessments, and those for which referendum are otherwise provided in other statutes. As a result, one can generally look at what are called initiative and referendum ordinances as applying to matters that are generally legislative in nature. We did have some experience with that, as you might recall, with the smoking ordinance. So another example of where the governing body was legislating, and so it was an appropriate subject for initiative and referendum. There are a set of rules related to petitions and there's a separate statute that addresses those. I think it's simplest to say that anyone who might have interest in the process would want to look at that particular portion of the statute as well. That's KSA 25-3601. There is provision under that statute for a review. Since this petition would potentially prompt an election, of course, there is an interest in being sure that the question posed is properly framed and presents a lawful question for purposes of an election ballot. So the statute now provides for a review within 5 days by the county councilor, since it prompts an election conducted by the county election officer, to review that form of the question for purposes of the petition. And there are also means of having multiple pages for that petition and means of verifying the authenticity of the signatures and that sort of thing. That's all set out in that separate statute on petitions. The process, if the petitions are signed, submitted to the county election officer for verification, if the numbers come back and it's verified that yes, that requisite number of city electors have signed the petition, that then brings the matter to the Board of City Commissioners. You then have, in that situation, the ability to adopt that ordinance without alteration within 20 days. If that does not occur, then there is the calling of a special election, depending on how it falls in relation to an upcoming city election, for submission of the ordinance without alteration to a vote of the electors. And as you might imagine, if a majority of the voters vote in favor of what the petition is calling for, then that is a valid binding ordinance. There's also additional protections that once that process has taken place, that an ordinance proposed by petition and either approved by the board or adopted by that majority vote of the electors cannot be repealed or amended unless there is a subsequent vote of the electors or by the Board of Commissioners, so long as 10 years has passed since the original enactment. The question that sometimes comes up as well, and we had that example in the case of the smoking ordinance, as you might recall, either an action can be initiated through this process and a new substantive ordinance, or if legislative action has been taken by the Board of Commissioners, certainly a petition simply seeking to repeal that action, as we had in the case of the smoking ordinance, is a legitimate exercise of that authority, of this process as well. So I'd be happy to try to answer any questions.
So if a petition is circulated and is valid prior to the commission taking any action on it, that petition comes before the commission to either vote to adopt or vote to put it on for special election.
Yes, the only small clarification, I think, it is, you wouldn't necessarily have to act on, if you simply did not act, but then moved to setting an election, that would be one scenario as well. But
And then comes, no petition is done. This process keeps going as it is moving forward now. In, 60 more days, the commission adopts the ordinance, the amendment that's been proposed. Another petition, after it's adopted, a petition can be circulated, signed, repealing what's been adopted. So there are two opportunities for the public to circulate a petition.
that's correct.
Okay.
So either way, whether adopted even or denied, then there would be an opportunity based upon the vote of the Board of Commissioners to appeal that decision. Is that correct? Mayor Angel spoke in terms of the ordinance being adopted, so the change in the ordinance then being adopted by the Board of Commissioners. If it was brought to a vote by the Board of Commissioners, but then there was no change made, then that would still be something that could be appealed through petition process.
When we
I
make
think
the
the answer
final
is yes,
vote
but
on
I'm
the
sorry, I'm
amendment.
not.
This is kind of precious. I've never seen a blank stare. from our-
No petition is circulated.
Nope.
We continue through the process as we're going through it now.
Right.
When the commission votes,
No matter the
we
outcome.
deny, we vote down the amendment.
Correct.
The public could still circulate a petition to bring it back before us to have a special election.
Yes.
So in other words, either way the vote goes, there's still opportunity for either side on the issue to appeal the outcome of the vote.
That's true.
Okay.
Okay.
And I'm sorry that wasn't sinking in as well as it should have. What if I'm understanding your action absent the context of a petition of any sort is simply as any other legislative act and would be subject to subsequent petition.
Commissioners, this is interesting because there's a, if you listen to a lot of the comments at the forum, there are comments made about if you, about concerns about it being put on a vote, as if you can just place it on the ballot. That's a different question, but and concerned about the tyranny of the majority in essence. But because you're working under your local authority with whatever you do, and because there is an initiative referendum process, regardless of what you do or not do, the public, if they should choose, has the ability to weigh in on the issue and make it a majority rules issue. Is that
Can you
accurate?
address that further? You kind of alluded to it. If no petition is circulated, this comes back to us in 90 days to either adopt the amendment or not adopt the amendment. Are those our only two choices, or is there a third choice for us just to decide to put it on the ballot?
I was about to speak to that, and that is not an alternative
No.
available to
It
you
has
either.
to be done through petition.
And neither on neither an advisory basis. I mean, there have been attempts before that have been determined to be not allowed as a matter of state law. So, in this type of question, in order for you to go to a vote at your initiative does take specific statutory authorization, as there are in certain cases with certain issues. This is not one of those.
So a petition has to be circulated for this to end up on a ballot.
That
Right.
is correct.
Either in advance of the action of the Board of Commissioners or subsequent that action.
Right.
Which is what you described in the beginning. Somebody could start that petition process now and bring it towards us or after the vote of the board.
Correct.
And then I understand too that the petition itself, there's some requirements for that to be sort of like hand delivered and witnessed or something. They can't just lay them around
Correct.
in restaurants and bars and different places. Is that right? Churches. So, I mean, who monitors that activity? Is that Don Merriman? Does he have to run around to see if these things are hand carried and witnessed? And
I'm sure that there would be possibly some sense of responsibility, as conscientious as Don is about those sorts of things. But the process, and if I may just read briefly there in the reference to the petition, is it says one person signing each paper must sign a sworn statement that each signature to the paper is the genuine signature of the person whose name it purports to be. So while I suppose someone could abuse that, it assumes that that someone is making a sworn statement that
So it
they
could be in the
observe
bar
those
if
signatures
the
being-
bartender's witnessing every every signature.
yeah, right.
that's
Sure.
history has told us that yes, that that could occur.
Any other questions? Any other business? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We're adjourned.